In the last movie, we looked at how we could go about reproducing these buttons inside of monoplate.psd in an HTML document, and we determined that several of these properties could be reproduced using CSS, such as the border, the drop shadow, and the text. The elements that couldn't be reproduced using CSS were these background assets. So what we did is we created a separate file and we stripped the buttons of all the extra properties, just leaving the background. What we want to do in this movie is export out an image that we can use for the background of a button. Now we're going to do something similar in this movie like we did when we created the top.png file earlier in this chapter. If we come back to monoplate.psd, again, if you look at the buttons vary in terms of their width. But when you use the background property in CSS, it tiles the image, giving us the ability to tile as wide as we need to for a particular button. So let's come back to that buttons file that we created in the last movie. And what I want to do is stack these assets on top of one another. In order for us to do that, you want to come over to the Read More Button Layer group. Furthermore, you want to select the button number 2 layer and you want to unlock it. Once you unlock it, you want to position it underneath the pattern for the upstate, if you will. Now, it's important to zoom in and really get the details on this. You want to make sure that they're matched up perfectly in terms of their patterns, and in this case they are, and I want to separate them by 1 pixel. After doing that, you can make a selection. Come over and choose the rectangular marquee tool. You can set the style to fixed size. I'm going to go with a width of 2 pixels, and in this case, I'm going to set the height to 53 pixels. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and click to make the selection. After making that selection, I'm just going to nudge it around using the arrow keys on the keyboard. With the marching ants around both columns of the pattern, and again, you may want to zoom in a little bit more just to confirm that you do in fact have both columns, and it looks like we do, with a 1 pixel space in between. You want to go ahead and export this out. Now here's the problem. The problem is this content is spanning across multiple layers. So we can temporarily flatten this image. In the top right-hand corner, choose that option, Flatten Image. In this case, it's going to discard the hidden layers. Again, this is okay because all of the assets are located inside of monoplate.psd. So if we make a catastrophic mistake, we can always go back and get the content if necessary. Go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK, you can copy your selection, Command-C or Control-V on Windows. Go to the File menu, choose New. It's going to open up the New Document dialog box. It's going to set the width and height for you. Go ahead and set the resolution to 72 pixels an inch and click OK. Once you click OK, you want to paste that artwork, Control-V or Command-V on the Mac. Again, choose the Zoom tool and zoom into that area to confirm that the pattern is appearing the way that you want it to. And it looks like that's the case. So what we want to do is export this out. Go to the File menu and choose Save for Web. What we want to do here is set it to PNG. I believe we need more than 8 colors in this case. I'm going to go with 16. And again, if you need to, zoom into the artwork to make sure it's going to appear the way that you want it to appear. And I think that looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and increase this to 32 colors. It doesn't really look like it made much of a difference in terms of the appearance of the gradient. So I'm going to go ahead and set it back to 16. And I think that looks pretty good. Again, you could go to the 4-Up tab and you could apply multiple color values in terms of the number of colors that are being included to compare them side by side. I feel pretty safe with 16 here, so I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And you want to make sure that you're saving this inside the Images folder, which is inside the Includes folder, which is inside the Blank folder, which is inside the PSD to HTML folder. And we're going to go ahead and call this button.png. Go ahead and click Save. Once you click Save, the asset has been exported and optimized as a PNG file, and we can later use that in CSS. And if any of this doesn't make sense, if we just come back to buttons here for one moment, when you're working in CSS to create that mouse over effect, instead of swapping out images and making 2 calls to the server, you're using one image and you're just changing the location of that image to create that rollover effect. It's an optimized way of creating rollovers, again, with less calls to the server, ultimately creating a speedier site.